Greetings everyone, welcome to this new video. We're gonna talk about Winter Orb and leveling. So I'm gonna give you all the necessary steps to get yourself up to map level and beyond that. So first of all, there's been some concerns regarding Winter Orb, that it's got a nerf. I wanna put that to rest because it's only 10% to 12% nerf to us. And considering that Winter Orb was so OP in this Betrayal League, then it's going to go into Synthesis League very strong. And we got some new passive on the passive tree, which means that we're going to have a better channeling skill there. There's 2 clusters of that, and we're going to have new support gems and other things that might even buff our damage in the end. And we are very dependent also on Abyss Jewels. Of course, it got a little bit of nerf on that end also in damage effectiveness, but it was minuscule. Which means that we are at a really good place. It's a tier 1 clear speed build that can do all the bosses in the game. Uber Elder has never been easier than doing it with the Winter Orb build, because you just wind up your stacks and then just run around him and basically just can focus on only hitting the boss and dodging all these attacks. So it can't be easier than that. Another one we might want to look out for, I know my build guides are for non-crit version, but we might want to consider crit in this. So you might want to look at the forum for the crit builds when it comes to Winter Orb. The reason for that is that we had a minimum 5% crit. You could never go below that in Betrayal and the one leagues before that. But now they've changed this, which means that it can go all the way down to 0%. We're not gonna hit 0, but with the combination of us not stacking crit and we have controlled destruction as one of our links, means that we're gonna cut that crit in half, and it might actually mean that we have not enough crit to proc elemental overloads, which means we're not gonna get that 40% elemental damage buff for those 8 seconds. But that might be we just need to try it out and see if that will be the case. So without further ado, let's go into the leveling. To start off with, we're gonna start with the leveling from level 1 and forward. It's gonna be with Frostbolt and Ice Nova in 2 separate link setups. Why I'm doing this is because they have great synergy with each other. They do not need to be in the same link for this to work. What you're gonna do is you're gonna cast your Frostbolt, and while it is flying in the air, you're gonna hit the Ice Nova button, and what it's gonna do is it's gonna pulse the Ice Nova that is normally around your character. Is gonna go around the Frostbolt, and it's gonna hit it twice, so it's gonna pulsate twice. Normally when it pulsates, it only pulsates 1 time, but now you can make Ice Nova a ranged skill and it pulsates twice, so it's gonna be double the damage. So not only is the Frostbolt is gonna hit the enemies, also you're gonna have Ice Nova that's hitting all the enemies in a great AoE twice. So these are great skills to set it up. What I would link it is with at level 8, I would link it with added cold damage, and then I would just fill up the slots when depending what kind of links I have. But then at level 18 I would go for either elemental focus or concentrated effect if you think your area is already big enough for those Ice Nova blasts, or controlled destruction. And if you're going for the crit version of this, then increased critical strike might be a good one to go at level 8 also. This one you should level all the way up to Act 4, which we'll be talking about now. So at Act 4 you're gonna hit a point where you are offered as a quest reward greater multiple projectile. So as we all know, Winter Orb we can start using at 28, but I would hold off to that on that one until I get greater multiple projectile. The reason for that is because Winter Orb is one projectile, and if you have greater multiple projectile, that is going to be 4 projectiles. That on top of that, which means we have a total of 5. The reason why we want this is because Winter Orb can have the shotgun effect, which means that they can overlap in the same area. So if you're shooting 5 projectiles at one enemy, they can overlap, and all 5 of those can hit that enemy. So it's 5 times that what your base damage is. And we want to link it together with controlled destruction if we can, and we can only if we can reliably hit the elemental overload. Otherwise, I would take this one out. Then we'll have elemental focus, concentrated effect, because we already have a big AoE. We do not really need that extra AoE from Winter Orb, so I highly suggest this one. It's a great multiplier. And increased critical strike if you're running the critical strike version of this build. With all of these links, you should be nice, and you should be looking for some items that has well, if you're looking for a 4 link, I would go for 3 blue ones and 1 green one. So those are the things that you want to look for in the leveling. And this setup can go all the way up to maps. This is the way you want to do it. And just if you get a 5 link, then you just add one of these links that I have on the screen, and then you add, and then you add, then you add, until you have your 6th link at Act 8, for example, or Act 9 when we want to do Blood Aqueducts. So for gear, we want to look for, mostly while we're leveling, we want to have decent damage. I always stack a lot of damage in the beginning of any league because I'm playing softcore. If you're playing hardcore, you want to play it safe, then you want a lot of life and a lot of resistance. But the things you want to look for primarily is being a kind of a glass cannon build, which means that you're going to go a lot on damage mods. What I'm talking about here is the weapon. High spell damage is something we're looking for, and the same on the shield. Or you can even dual wield. It's probably better here at the start to just dual wield 2 wands, for example, or 2 scepter or something like that. That gives a lot of spell damage. There's also spell damage mods on the rings and amulet that you can look for. Otherwise, I would just go and try to get as close as I can to 75% res on all my gear pieces. So I would max out the res we can get, and also stack as much life as possible. We can worry about the rest of the stats when we get to the end game. This should carry you most of the way. Try not to put too much effort into the chest slot, because we are gonna replace that one pretty fast when we get to Act 9 and Blood Aqueduct. Flasks are super important also, because it's gonna be hard to sustain especially in the beginning when we are playing the Frostbolt and Ice Nova, and even when we go in Winter Orb. Not as high mana intensive, but we're gonna need mana flasks in the beginning and might even need them later. I did not, because I had another stat on my gear that I also might mention. It's mana recovery rate, which means that you are actually getting your mana replenished while you're doing stuff. So like, that is a really good stat. If it's a quality of life stat, then you're not gonna need any mana flask. So what you're gonna need is 1 or 2 life flask, a mana flask, and then you just want to stack. I always stack with 2 Quicksilver flask. The first one you can get from the second quest you get in the game, which is the one that takes you to Tidal Island, and you're gonna kill a boss. It's a side area there. It's an optional quest, so you might miss it, but it's right at the start of the game, and you pick up as a reward there a Quicksilver flask. So those are the ones you really want. Then at the later part of the game, when you hit Act 9 and stuff like that, you might want to pick up something like, I don't know, a crit flask if you're running a crit build or a basalt flask or something like that. It all depends on you, what you want to focus on. If you want to focus on survivability, you can also pick up an onslaught flask, because onslaught gives you an extra movement speed and stuff like that. And movement speed is very key here if you want to do leveling very fast in this game. For bandits, I would suggest that you kill them all. Any good player knows that you can probably be sure that you can use those 2 passive points better than any other reward from helping any of the bandits. So otherwise, for second choice, I would choose helping a Lyra, because she gives you a crit, but it's a waste for us if you're not doing a crit build, and it gives you all rest. So that would be my second choice here. But those 2 passive points I can put better use than any of the other rewards. For our ascendancies, we are gonna go for our Shaper of Desolation as the first one, and after that it's up to you, honestly. It's 2 different choices I have here. It depends what kind of content you want to do later on in the game. I went for Paragon of Calamity after I realized that Winter Orb was so overpowered and I did not need all that extra damage. It's still the case, we're still very overpowered and we're still super fast on clearing and killing bosses. So why even bother going for this Beacon of Ruin, which gives us that extra shock chance, or it gives us a minimum 20% shock as long as we hit any mob with any lightning damage, which is very good. It gives us like a flat 20% extra damage. But on the ring, there's a ring mod which can give us almost the same. It can give us shocked nearby enemies for 4 seconds when focused. So when I hit my focus button, I'm gonna shock the enemies anyway, and that is also 20%. So I did not feel like this one was needed anymore, because I will have that mod on my ring. And this let us, the Paragon of Calamity, will help us with Elemental Reflect, which means we can run every mod in the game on all the maps we roll. That means we can val every map and we're gonna be able to actually run them. And we also don't need to worry about any life leech, because 0.5 elemental damage leech is plenty to keep our life up. So if we run these 2, Shaper of Desolation and Paragon of Calamity, then you would go for the second one. You would do Pendulum of Destruction and then go into Mastermind of Discord. Pendulum Destruction gives us some extra damage and some extra AoE depending, but honestly we're mostly doing it because we want to get to Mastermind of Discord. It's gonna buff our Herald of Ice or any other Herald you might decide to use, and it's gonna give us a penetration of 25% cold, which is huge. And it's gonna also, most importantly, reduce the mana reservation of our Herald skills, which is gonna free us up for a lot of different other auras for our Aspect of the Spider, for example, and Blasphemy. If we do not take this one, we're simply not gonna have enough mana to reserve. So, very important to think this out. What kind of content do I want to do? Do I want to do a farming build with the Val Orbs to maximize my profits, or do I just want to wait for the right sextant mods to actually get the don't take elemental damage? But then you kind of waste that one. So yeah, it's a trade-off. For our Pantheons, we are gonna pick for the Major God. We're gonna pick Soul of Lunaris because it gives us movement speed and additional physical damage reduction per enemy around us, and we're going to move very fast, which means that we're going to have a lot of enemies around us at all time. We're also going to have some other benefits if you fully upgrade it, like the chain is very good, the one at the bottom, because we are ranged and we don't want to be chained by other enemies, especially at higher tier maps. Then we're gonna go for Soul of Shakiri. is a minor god here, and we're gonna pick mostly because they're immune to poison. Then we don't need to worry about the poison stacks they're stacking up and silently killing us in the middle of the map. And you might be wondering to yourself, how did I die? Well, it might be poison that just killed you. So there's a good quality of life thing to have this, and also we're not stacking any chaos res, so it might be good to get some minus chaos damage taken. The passive tree, you want to stack as much damage as you can in the beginning, so I would just travel up here and take all the spell damage and up to this node, and we would continue up to Elemental Overload. And again, I want to tell you here that Elemental Overload is going to be affected by the new crit changes, which means that we might not proc it as reliable as we used to. That is something you might want to take into consideration. So I might actually go down here and pick up some nodes down here, which is a lot of elemental damage and stuff like that, spell damage. So I would start taking these nodes, and then I will also take these because it gives mana regeneration rate and quality of life down here for skill effectuation for Winter Orb, but only do that when Winter Orb. So Elemental Overload is going to be very effective when you are doing when you get greater multiple projectiles to your Winter Orb, because you're going to shoot out so many projectiles, it's bound to be one of them that actually crits, which means that this is going to proc and you're going to have 40% elemental damage for 8 seconds. And you're going to be hard pressed to not, at the speed we're killing, you're going to be hard pressed not to have it always procced at any time. And this works for bosses and everything. Then we'll travel a little bit here. You could pick up these, but honestly, we don't really need the area of effect on any of the skills. So what most people do is they travel all the way here and just pick up these nodes and try to rush to this face acrobatics. But it's up to you, because this is extra survivability, and these are more, if you hit up here, I would not go for these though. I would go for as much damage as I can on the tree. There's also new areas to the tree that you might want to have. They are somewhere around here. Here are very good nodes also for damage, by the way. But it's going to be a channeling area. 2 of those channeling areas. You might want to take a look at those. Those are going to be very good for our damage, I believe. So you might want to check where those are. Just type in up here channeling, and you will get where those are. So you might want to path your way over there. So that's all I have for you. Hopefully I answered all your questions. If you have any more though, put it in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel and have a good day. Thank you.